You know, guys, denial is strong. Denial is something that a lot of people experience throughout their life at some point in time, and it seems like Dragon Age The Veilguard fans, if you even want to call them that, are still, even till this day, experiencing denial. We are about a year out from Dragon Age The Veilguard's release and massive failure that ended up in the destruction of an entire studio, but you still have people out here all over social media, especially now more than ever, trying to push the narrative that Dragon Age The Veilguard was actually a success and the entirety of the chuds were wrong on this one. It's so funny. These people are the ones that'll be desperate to want you to admit when you are wrong, but they can never just sit there and actually admit when they are wrong. All of us are wrong at some point in time in life, and at the end of the day, we all have to admit when we are wrong, and we also have to admit when we are right. And in this situation, Dragon Age The Veilguard was so obviously going to be a video game that was going to flop, considering the betrayal of fans from all aspects. By the way, we're talking about fans of original Dragon Age games, we're talking about fans of RPGs in general, we're talking about the betrayal from literally every standpoint that you possibly can betray a person who likes a particular style of video game. Dragon Age The Veilguard is exactly that, and in today's video, we are going to go over the massive levels of cope that is happening not only on social media, but also all across gaming media as a whole, because even major establishments are trying to talk about that Dragon Age Day came and went, and nobody is talking about the video game that they all loved due to every other reason other than being a good video game. So hit that like button, subscribe button, all that good YouTube algorithm nonsense, and make sure to comment down below, because if you don't comment, your view's not going to count. And that just sucks. Today's video, we're going to start off with a post here from Legacy Killer HD over on X, and it says the following: Dragon Age The Veilguard fans are very funny people. And again, I don't know who he's talking about when it comes to Dragon Age The Veilguard fans. I feel like most of them that claim to be fans are probably people who are just, Twitter bots. I'm not saying there aren't real people that enjoy Dragon Age The Veilguard. I just feel like the number is obviously so much lower than social media tried to portray itself as. But in any case, they say, and yes, they are actually arguing that it was a success. Number one, it sold 50% less than expected. Number two, Steam user rating is mixed. Number three, most of the Veilguard team was actually fired. Now, I want you guys to understand about, this, before we get into this whole situation about the cope and whatever these people are saying, I want you guys to understand, Dragon Age The Veilguard, when it released, there was a lot of information flying around about it at the time, right? And the truth is that Dragon Age The Veilguard had a pretty high concurrent player count, but the reason why, in my opinion, this game had a high concurrent player count is because not only the amount of people who were streaming the game, which was a lot, by the way, everybody wanted to stream the massive shit show that was going to be Dragon Age The Veilguard. We can clearly see from all the rumors that we heard about the game, we can clearly see from all the leaks that we heard about the game, the famous scene with Tosh, how she literally sat down awkwardly, quietly at a family setting with the main character, and just out of nowhere said, "So,
thank you."
So, I'm non-binary.
What the hell?
What does that mean?
It means I don't feel like a man or a woman.
If you are neither a man nor a woman, then what are you?
Non-binary. I just said, and I'm going to use they instead of she from now on.
If this is because I have criticized your dress or your manners...
It isn't!
Under the Cune, the term for one whose gender does not match the one given to them at birth was a cunithlock. Perhaps you are like that.
Why do you have to keep picking at it? Why can't you just be happy for me?
Evatosh, chakra to ebra.
So I'm supposed to struggle with who I am? Even if I don't feel like I fit, even if I feel wrong?
No, you misunderstood.
Then say it better! Why am I never enough for you?
I will go. Thank you for inviting me to your home.
It's the weirdest thing, and once we all saw that stuff leak, we knew that this game was going to be legendary content, because quite frankly, this level of betrayal to the original franchise is just, you don't get to see this too often. You see betrayals every now and then, of course, but we're talking about legendary betrayal. We're talking about the complete opposite of what Dragon Age ever used to be, and it just honestly is hilarious. So when that scene ended up leaking, everybody knew that this was going to be the moment where we're going to see the destruction and the death of Dragon Age, and it really is quite sad when you think about it. Right now, this game over on SteamDB, again, had an all-time peak over a year ago at 89,418, and that peak fell off very quickly and it never recovered. There's 1,446 people playing within a 24-hour period at the time of filming this video, with 1,010 people playing the game right now at the time of filming this video. Now, this game just recently went on sale, so people probably decided to pick it up because right now the cheapest price of this game ever was recorded at $20.99. So the game has gone on super sale, and this is when games like Dragon Age tend to gain some legs, because otherwise nobody's going to want to buy it at full price. That's part of the reason why this game never sold the way that it could have, because the price was too high and what it was offering was too little. Not only that, the game has 42,000 reviews right now, sitting at a 68% rating over on Steam. It is pretty damn abysmal. So overall, this game and its history, everybody is very well aware of. Now let's go over what Legacy Killer is talking about over here on X. So he shared some screenshots, and it's of a person called X Dustlight, and says Veilguard didn't kill Dragon Age, EA killed Dragon Age. Oh my god, bro. The amount of people that try to take the blame away from the Bioware developers and try to shift it to EA only, it's like, bro, you realize that both of them are responsible for the reason why Dragon Age died. They've self-expressed that the game was successful and that they still decided to bury it. The game isn't perfect, but it didn't betray itself or its fans. Stop grifting. Oh my god. First off, grifting, like really? Grifting, because he has an I cannot stand it. It's so annoying. These people know that they're misusing that word, but anyway, it is what it is. I already talked about that in length. So the game absolutely did betray itself, and the game did betray its fans. And the truth is that Dragon Age The Veilguard was in development hell. It ended up being multiple different iterations. It started off as a single player game, and then ended up becoming a live service game, for it to only become a single player game again with minimal RPG elements and completely on rails for the most part. Like, this game, I want you to understand, absolutely did betray itself, and especially its fans. They made some of the most cringe writing that I think I've ever seen in modern day video game, which again, we're going to talk about that as we continue the video. But this game did betray people. This game did betray its fans. And just because, let's say this person is real, let's say they're not a bot, which again, I have a hard time, believing, but let's say they're a real person. That's okay. It's okay for you to like a video game that everybody else hates. Do you understand that? That doesn't mean that people are grifting. It just means that you happen to be the exception and not the rule for this particular situation or this particular game. It's fine that you like it. Go ahead. Nobody's saying you can't like it, but you also can't sit up here and tell people what they can and cannot say about a video game that you happen to like. Again, I don't understand these people. These people are like, well, I like it, so that means everybody else has to like it. Otherwise, you're grifting. Shut the fuck up, bro. What are you even talking about? So this person was quote tweeting Legacy Killer saying, dead franchise, Veilguard literally killed Dragon Age. You can blame whoever you want, but that Bioware team didn't care to. And then it basically cuts off because I can't see the screenshot. And then right after, by the way, right after quote tweeting Legacy Killer, this person does the obvious, right? They didn't even wait, by the way. They didn't even wait to get any responses, very little responses. They ended up saying, I'm muting this because I don't feel like arguing with a brain dead asshat, and because someone even worse than you has found it. But the game was a critical success and had the highest player count on Steam for an EA game ever. Plus, EA turned around and called it a success later. Now, I don't remember EA calling it a success. I remember them saying that it sold half of what they wanted it to sell. So again, I don't know how that's a success, number one. Number two, the reason why this game has such a high player count on Steam is because EA back in, I believe, 2020 ended up putting their games back on Steam after removing them from Steam because they were trying to compete with their own launcher called Origin. And then that ended up failing to the point where they started doing EA Play subscription, and then they put their games back on Steam, allowing you to purchase them. So again, of course, this game is going to have the highest player count because it was the most recent game that came out on Steam after Steam has exploded in growth over the last 5 years, which again would coincide with EA putting their games back on Steam at a time where Steam had a much lower player count, even though it was always high, to be fair. But still, Steam is astronomically bigger bigger now than it's ever been, and the customers that are going to potentially play this game were going to be on Steam, not EA. Now, again, I want you guys to understand something. Then they try to say the game was a critical success. Who gives a shit? The journalists right now, which is going to be later in this video, are currently melting down right now because nobody cared about their reviews enough to save Dragon Age The Veilguard. You understand that nobody cares, for the most part, about the mainstream gaming media, unless you're talking about super normies that still think IGN is something to be considered. At the end of the day, man, most of the time, these review scores end up getting criticized, laughed at, because they're so ideologically driven, especially from outlets like Kotaku or Eurogamer, for example. These people care more about their feelings and representation than they care about what's actually in the game. And they try to convince everybody that Dragon Age The Veilguard was a 9 out of 10. They had all of these reviews ready to go the moment the game dropped. 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, glowing reviews, the most amazing game ever, absolutely no mistakes with it, perfect game. And then all of a sudden people realize, oh, that's not true. And then the journalist came out and said, you know what, well, actually they're right, it's not true, but we're still going to keep it at a 9 out of 10 because, you know, reasons. It's such a joke. Nobody cares about the critical success of a video game. All people care about is what other actual gamers are reviewing the game at. And quite frankly, Veilguard got felted on the reviews, especially in the beginning. And then of course Legacy Killer showcases an article saying, confirmed, Dragon Age The Veilguard's writers and producers were laid off as part of Bioware's restructuring. I want you guys to understand, you know, at the title of this video is probably going to reference this video game killed an entire studio. Dragon Age The Veilguard was the result of this studio from Bioware Edmonton essentially closing down, and the majority of the people working there got laid off, with some of them being absorbed into EA, but not many. Most of them ended up getting laid off, and this game is the reason why it happened. And the funny thing is, there's been internal conflict at this video game with some of the people who work there. Some of them saying that EA is the reason why the game was a jumbled mess, saying that EA essentially gave very little support to Dragon Age, right? They came up with all these excuses, but then over on Reddit, I believe, some writers that used to work on Veilguard ended up saying, no, we made the game exactly the way we wanted to make it. We made the exact game that we had in our vision, and people saying that we did it because of XYZ reason is not true. So these people are still, at the end of the day, after being fired, losing their jobs, they still are doubling and tripling down on the ideology that cost them their job in the first place. So after checking out Legacy Killer HD's post over here on X, he says, as I said before, you can blame this game's obvious failure on a number of factors, but it doesn't change the fact that it was a massive flop. Some still enjoyed it, more power to you if that's you. A majority of the Dragon Age fan base thought was turned off and didn't even bother touching it. I agree 100%. That's exactly where I'm at, man. I've been a major fan of Dragon Age, although I feel like I'm one of those people that feels like Origins was the tip-top Dragon Age. And at this point, I wish we could get another one, but I know that we're never going to. You know, our new Dragon Age The Origins, you know what game that was? That was Baldur's Gate 3. I'm just being real with you. Unfortunately, we're just never going to get a modern Dragon Age game that plays and looked like Origins ever again. I think that's pretty much done. And this game is the reason why it's done. This game is the reason why Dragon Age is going to end on that very awful note. And there's nothing that's going to change that. So after reading all of this, I ended up deciding to go and check out some of these articles and just happened to look up and see, okay, well, what's the overall sentiment right now, 1 year later, about Dragon Age The Veilguard? Well, it's not good. You have establishments like Kotaku saying the following: Dragon Age Day comes and goes in complete silence just 1 year after Veilguard. This comes after a ton of internal strife before, during, and after Dragon Age The Veilguard. And this is actually true. So number one, obviously Dragon Age Day came and went because you guys killed the franchise. That's not our fault. That's your fault. You guys completely killed the franchise. You went too on the nose with this stuff. This is the problem. This is why I say modern day writers are the #1 problem in the entertainment industry as a whole, including video games. Modern day writers do not understand how to write certain things into their stories and make it an enjoyable experience. They go too on the nose. They want to tell you about their ideology so bad that they circumvent everything else. They ignore everything else, and it ends up being a situation like this where you have scenes that you have characters in a fantasy game telling you that they're non-binary in the most awkward way possible, as if some writer was describing the way that they came out to their family. It was so cringe. Like, This is the biggest problem. If you really want to be a writer in entertainment, gaming, whatever, you have to understand that if you're going to self-insert, make it enjoyable, make it something that is actually truly part of the story. Don't make it something that it takes people out of the story that you're trying to sell them. And at the end of the day, Dragon Age is trying to sell them a dark fantasy story that you completely pulled people out of the moment you pull that nonsense with Tosh. And not only that, other things in the game as well that are very evident when you play through the game. Now, just a reminder for those of you that don't know, I did review the game. I was asked to by my fans to check out the game, and I absolutely did, because as a Dragon Age fan, I was like, you know what? Let me try to be as objective as possible. And when I reviewed this game, I talked about the positives, because there were positives in the game. I talked about the good, I talked about the mid, I talked about the ugly, and I talked about the wow. You know what I'm saying? Like, there is so many things that were in that game, but unfortunately, the good was far outweighed by the bad. There was so many issues with the gameplay. So, like, I literally spent my entire time spamming the same 2 skills all the way to the end of the game. I'm not even kidding. When you want to talk about simplistic combat, unsatisfying combat, that is the literal example that is Dragon Age The Veilguard. So again, I tried to give the game a fair chance, but ultimately it just was one of those things where it kept falling on its face. And yes, there were internal strife. Like Kotaku said, the internal strife before, during, and after over at Bioware and outside of Bioware once everybody got fired was everywhere. You had multiple people chiming in that used to work at Bioware, that currently worked at Bioware, or that, you know, ended up getting fired from Edmonton, whatever it may be. They were all chiming in on their own opinions, and some of them, or a lot of them, I should say, were disagreeing with each other and saying, no, this is EA's fault, this is our fault, this is your fault, this is everybody's fault except for the game director, who, by the way, ended up leaving before the massive cuts over at the Edmonton studio. Is anybody surprised by this? The director who ended up directing this game ended up leaving this game to go to Wizards of the Coast, who currently now works at some studio that is working on another RPG game right now. A lot of people theorize that it is the next Baldur's Gate because they took Baldur's Gate away from Larian, but we don't know that yet. We have no idea. I also decided to check out on Eurogamer because Eurogamer is one of those establishments that gave this game a glowing review. We're talking about absolute sucking off review. And they said the following: revisiting Dragon Age The Veilguard 1 year later, how have our thoughts changed on BioWare's opinion-splitting RPG? The first paragraph says, for a year, on and off, I've been thinking about Dragon Age The Veilguard. I don't believe that at all, by the way. More specifically, I've been thinking about my Dragon Age The Veilguard review, the 5-star review that I wrote for Eurogamer. It plagues me because, to be blunt, I'm not happy with how it sits. I don't think The Veilguard is a 5-star game, and definitely don't think it's a BioWare's best game. To have suggested such a thing has haunted me for 12 months, particularly as new information about Veilguard's troubled development has arisen, and we've learned how a Mass Effect team commandeered the project in order to rescue it, overriding the Dragon Age team at its core. Nevertheless, the project was rescued, in 3 attempts later, including 1 live service near miss, BioWare managed to turn out a single-player role-playing game, which in itself is a remarkable thing, and I enjoyed it an awful lot. I'm not here to discredit my review entirely, nor am I here to say we're altering our original review, because that's not something we do. Our reviews are an encapsulation of how we felt about something at a specific time. But is Veilguard the legacy to remember the troubled Dragon Age series by? That I'm not so sure about. I find this to be incredible that they are actually self-aware to the point to openly admit that their review was completely full of shit. I like this. I like this. We need more of this. If the gaming industry was more like this, perhaps we could start getting back to something, right? But at the end of the day, they openly admit they're not going to change their review. Their review is completely full of crap, right? And they know that this game is not what they said it was. It's not a 5-star rated game. It's not the best BioWare game ever. It's not all this glowing nonsense that they said that it was, but they said that because this game is ideologically driven. And now that it is safe to talk about this from their standpoint, right? Because they were trying to say that the chuds were just grifting. We're just grifting for saying what this game was. And meanwhile, the mainstream gaming media can show up a year later and then basically write a little article asterisk next to their review and say, well, you know what? The chuds were actually right. We were completely wrong about this game, but we're not going to change it because, you know, reasons. It's like, bro, are you serious right now? This is such a joke. So Eurogamer even openly admits that this game is pretty much complete shit compared to what they said it was in the beginning. You even have Tech for Gamers over here with an article saying EA and BioWare have completely ignored Dragon Age Day amid deteriorating series quality. The future of the franchise looks grim. I think we are well past the future of the franchise looks grim. It's pretty obvious that this game is not going to be anything at this point. So what does this mean, ladies and gentlemen, for Dragon Age as a franchise? Well, to be honest with you guys, I have given up complete hope. I have moved on personally. I have put this in the bin of this is never going to see the light of day ever again. And it's sad. It's unfortunate. You know, this didn't have to be this way. Obviously, this RPG has a long history, a legacy that I personally enjoyed. And I honestly kind of want to boot back up Dragon Age The Origins and kind of just dive back into that video game and just get a feeling of nostalgia because, man, Dragon Age truthfully was a fantastic world to explore. It was a dark fantasy RPG that, you know, back in the day truly gave you that role-playing feel, that role-playing experience. And this was back in the day with Magic Bioware. Bioware was one of my favorite studios. If you guys don't know my history, I'm going to give it to you in a couple of seconds. It's my two favorite studios of all time in video game history, and they no longer are today because they're no longer what they used to be. My two favorite studios was Blizzard Entertainment, okay? Original Blizzard anyway. I'm not talking about Activision Blizzard. Blizzard Entertainment was one of my favorite studios of all time. In my eyes, they could literally do no wrong back in the day. The games they were releasing were fantastic between Warcraft, Diablo, StarCraft, and then World of Warcraft as well. All these games were just top tier video games, and they were even made a meme where, you know, soon TM, if you guys know the history of Blizzard, soon TM was a meme because at the end of the day, they would delay the game and keep delaying the game until the game was absolutely ready. They would not release the game until it was a game that was worthy of its players. Obviously, that's not the case anymore, but, you know, that's how it was. And my second favorite studio of all time was Bioware. Original Bioware put out some of the most fantastic products that in my eyes can never do any wrong. They put out banger after banger after banger between Dragon Age games, between Mass Effect especially. I love Mass Effect, obviously, at least up until the third one and its ending that we're not going to talk about because I can't rage on for another 20 minutes. But still, these developers, man, original Bioware, original Blizzard was my two favorite studios of all time, and they have completely died off for whatever the reason may be. Now, Blizzard died off due to corporate greed and combining with Activision, on top of other stuff too, but that was the main thing. I remember talking about that merger way back in the day with my friends and saying, we are seeing the end of Blizzard, and they all thought I was crazy. And now look at them, right? You also have original Bioware developers. For the most part, a lot of them are gone. They're just not there anymore, and the studio is completely ideologically captured to the point where now that particular side of the studio has been killed off, and now all that's left is Mass Effect. All eyes are on the upcoming Mass Effect game. If this game misses, if this is not a banger, Bioware is dead for good, guaranteed. Especially with the new buyout from EA, Bioware will absolutely be gone. So you guys let me know in the comments down below, what do you think about this entire situation 1 year later about Dragon Age The Veilguard? Did you play the game? What did you think about the game? Did you enjoy it? Did you not enjoy it? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it, consider liking, subscribing, commenting. Otherwise, your view's not going to count, and that sucks. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.